So look, I'm just going to say the audience we've got tonight are a mixture of probably highly excited 17 and 18-year-olds and very, very worried mothers, secretly probably hoping their little darlings don't go away for a year to nasty places around the world. But I just want to try, hoping this is going to be a session of questions. We're getting questions flooding in at the moment, so that's great. But I'm just going to put the questions randomly to you guys and just hope that you can, I don't know, lift the clouds a little bit on what's actually going on and what are the do's and don'ts. And so to introduce everybody, they're probably in different places on your screen, but outside, showing off slightly in Venice, is Charlie Hall from John Hall Venice. And then I've got Tom Farnworth from Trailfinders in the grey shirt. I've got Florence Midwood in Culsans with the flower pot behind her. I've got Emily Lusty and Millie Whitehead from, Millie Whitehead from The Leap, I beg your pardon. Emily Lusty from The Language Gap with the banner behind. And Charlotte Dawson, nothing to do with me, not related, but from Ski La Gap. So maybe let's start at the bottom of my screen. Millie, maybe you can just give a couple of sentences on The Leap and what you do best.
Well, hi, good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm Millie, and I am a kind of one of the co-founders of The Leap, who specialize in team volunteering adventures. That's what it says on the tin. But I think over the last 8 months, having sent many a gap year traveller away through the pandemic, I think we should be rebranding ourselves as COVID travel specialists. That's what we've become. So that's what we do. We've been sending people, we send people on these team experiences to Costa Rica. Well, used to be all over the world, but now predominantly it's Costa Rica, Namibia, and Kenya.
Lovely, thank you. Charlotte?
Hi everyone, thanks for joining. So I am the program director for Ski La Gap. We've been providing ski and snowboard courses out in Canada since 1994. You guys can do the maths. And they are specifically designed for gap years. We have everything from a sort of 4-week course where you can get your level 1 instructor qualification, stay out and work for the rest of the season, all the way up to our new exciting trip where you go from the east to the west coast, exploring everything, I mean everything that Canada has to offer. So we have something out there for anyone that's desperate to get to the slopes.
Brilliant. Tom, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Tom Farnworth. I'm the divisional head of Trailfinders' new venture into the gap year market. So beginning of this year, we launched a new sub-brand, Trailfinders Travel Academy, which is sort of a one-stop shop, if you like, for everything gap year and student travel related, whether it's just doing a few weeks in Costa Rica, whether you want to go all around the world doing volunteering, group adventure tours, working holidays, and everything in between, which we'll go into in a short while later.
Brilliant. Emily?
Hi, I am Emily Lusty. I'm founder and director of The Language Gap. I run a slightly different service. I arrange a wide range of programs overseas with language learning at the heart of everyone, anywhere in the world, so any language, anywhere in the world. My background is in modern languages teaching, and I've lived and worked all over the world, but I can find solutions and ideas for gap years, exam preparation, university language year abroad, but I also deal with non-linguists. So if you're going somewhere where you need to learn the language to do the thing you want to do, and I'm there to facilitate it and to find a thing that you love doing. So it could be any activity combined with any language anywhere in the world, but everything I do is tailor-made. So I don't have off the peg offers. I just look at you and work with you in the capacity of gap year counsellor to find the best options.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emily. Florence.
Hi, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. So yeah, my name is Florence Midwood, and I am founder and managing director of Culsans Gap Travel. And we are a small, passionate company that runs one gap year trip a year out to Kenya in the middle of the bush. It's 8 weeks long. We are real specialists in this area, and it's all about conservation. So our main aim is to create the future conservation ambassadors, while really supporting local communities, bringing in vital income, but also making the most of all the networking opportunities possible out there, giving our students a great adventure while also developing lots and lots of skills. So similarly to what Charlotte was saying about going all across Canada, we don't stand in one place. We are really showing you behind the scenes on many, many different pioneering conservancies out there.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lawrence. And Charlie, lastly but not least.
Hello, thank you very much for having me along, and welcome to the webinar. My father, John Hall, launched the John Hall Venice course in 1965, thereby, I wouldn't quite say single-handedly inventing the gap year, but his aim was to introduce students who were going off to university to the culture and the artistic expressions of mainly Europe, possibly specifically Italy, not exclusively art history. You'll have to excuse the presence of seagulls and swifts because I am actually joining you from Venice. We're in the midst of the program that we're running, which usually happens from late January until late March, but obviously due to the pandemic, we have been able to be nimble enough to move the course to run from June to July. And we introduce a wide range of students to various subjects, which include astrophysics, literature, philosophy, art, history of art, music, and all sorts of things in between, including, obviously, Italian cooking, life drawing, Italian language, photography. But the real core of the experience is spending 6 weeks living as a resident in Venice. And then we go on to Florence and we finish off in Rome. And people who have had that experience almost certainly always make friends for life.
Brilliant. That sounds fascinating and different. And I'm going to start with one question I've got, which I suspect is quite an interesting answer. Would you still recommend for a child to go to a red zone? Does it really matter? I'm going to put that to Emily.
Yes, we were having, as you said, a bit of a travel chat beforehand, but I think that the attitude here in the UK towards travel abroad is incredibly, it's a little bit strange because we're looking at travel from our perspective, but actually what we have to look at is the country of choice where you're trying to go. We've got to look at what their requirements are. So before you decide where you're going, I think what we've classified a country as is more or less unimportant. First of all, are you doing something that is going to be beneficial to that country, such as volunteering, or are you doing something that is part of your education that you need to go in any case there? If there's no alternative to doing that, and you know that you're going to be bringing something positive to your education or to the local community, then absolutely there's no reason that you shouldn't go there if they are willing to accept you, and if you have taken a sensible and careful decision that you're a low risk person. So if you're vaccinated, if you've had COVID already, if you're low risk and you're happy to take the risk of potential lockdowns and all those kind of things, that you're well informed, then I see absolutely no reason not to go to a red country. However, if you find that red country is in a state of lockdown and crisis and that you're going to be an additional burden or you're going to be at risk, then absolutely not. But the classification that I think is sometimes arbitrary, that is given by the British government and chopped and changed on a regular basis, I don't think is important. I think it's about looking at what you're going to be doing there and what that's going to bring. Is it going to make the world a better place, basically? Yeah.
And anyone else got any thoughts on that particular one? Charlie?
Yeah, I have actually. Is that we were last year in 2020, in March, we were in Italy that became a red zone, and the Italian government essentially closed everything down. And one of the aspects of our program is that we take people around museums, we take people around churches and galleries. They are free to wander around in the streets. And if that country is inoperative, then the program that we offer is then subsequently also inoperative. So it very much depends on how the government that you're going to treats visitors and its own people. So Italy became a red zone, and essentially in March 2020, we would have been, if we hadn't have dashed for the border, like Julie Andrews with the Von Trapp kids, we would have just sat in a hotel for 2 weeks, paying a bill and not being able to enjoy the country. So I think, you know, if you're in Brazil and if you're in the middle of the rainforest, or if you're in India, way in the middle, away from a city, then I think being in a red zone is perfectly doable.
Yeah. Tom, what about you?
With what happens when you get back?
Yeah, the other thing as well, particularly on the sort of volunteer project side of things, lots of volunteer projects that we speak to, when volunteers go out there, they're doing, you know, really good, important work on the ground. And just because, you know, COVID came along in March last year and stopped all that travel, I know the same will be the case for all the projects with the LEAP. The good work that is required on the ground, and you know, all the animals and wildlife and schools that rely on these volunteers to be there all year round, the work hasn't stopped. You know, the issues haven't gone away. But sadly, the volunteers that did all the good work largely have gone away. And so there's this real sort of backlog, if you like, of all that good work that's previously been done that it does need to, you know, pick it up some stage. So go on, Millie.
I want to add to that in addition to what Tom's just said, and Charlie and Emily, there's a different perspective. The attitudes towards the red zone have completely changed. Florence and we've been working in Africa since Christmas. Now, when Africa went on the red zone, like you, Charlie, back in the day, you know, with Italy, Jesus, there was hysteria, you know, in the families. You know, the phone was red hot. Oh my God, the kids. Red zone kind of in their people's minds equated to the first lockdown in March last year, and people thought that meant shit, red zone, full lockdown, kids are going to get trapped, and hysteria was in every family. We have moved so on from that now. We are way on. And yes, we dealt with that hysteria, but now these countries are going on the red zone. All our countries are on the red zone, Namibia, Costa Rica. And when we cancelled a Namibia trip due to the red zone, we got huge backlash from parents saying, but it's our choice. So now going forward, we've said, okay, our country is on the red zone. Who wants to go? And I would say 95% of the families go, we're going. And we say, right, well, we'll help you navigate your way home. And they're like, fine, we're still on.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, you have to factor in the price of that kind of COVID hotel when you come back.
Yeah. Can I also just, leading on from that, I think it's really important to think about your confidence levels as an individual. So if you're going solo traveling, how prepared are you to deal with things changing while you're out there? Or is there a bigger call to going with travel specialists for all the reasons that you guys have just highlighted? I think confidence levels of the individual looking or thinking about taking a gap year and traveling is really important.
Yeah. Lawrence?
I was just going to basically I really agree on what everyone is saying here, but I think now in COVID times, it really is, as Charlotte says, how confident would you be as a solo traveler? I think if you have someone on the ground with you that is hosting your trip, that is able to navigate through whatever is thrown at them, you know, while we were right in the middle of Kenya when all of this was sort of going on again, and being there on the ground with the students, being able to say, okay, well, hold on, we really don't need to panic. It is absolutely, completely fine. We just need to have our ducks in a row and various different options. And that's what our jobs as professionals in this industry is all about. All of our students on the recent Culsans trip got home absolutely fine. A few of them stayed out and still got home later, not a problem whatsoever. We're there to guide through all of that really vital documentation, and you know, we can help there on the ground in a crisis situation.
I would say also that we as organizations, funnily, COVID has brought so many positives, because I think we've all learned what we knew already, that looking at all these different eventualities is vital, but also talking to each other. Yeah, I'm in awe of what Millie has managed to do, for instance, for her leapers, when they've had to kind of get them, from one country, and using third countries, learning about that. If anyone wants to know more about that, I guess you'll just have to ask. It's slightly involved, but also well worth knowing about. And it's taking a view on what is presented to us through the media in this country as well, that travel is being discouraged on some occasions for good reasons, about the spread and introduction of new variants, and I totally respect. They don't want everyone kind of charging out on holiday, but these are not holidays. This is educational, this is purposeful, and this is meaningful. That is both important for the education of these young people who've been locked up in their bedrooms, having the most miserable couple of years. And so there's looking at them, and like Tom mentioned, that the local communities who have had a lifeline sort of pulled from under their feet through no fault of their own. And so by kind of looking at risk, mitigating risk, and weighing up pros and cons, and having adequate processes and protocols in place, I think that there is a really good reason to travel, and that we must carry on doing that, because getting out of the habit makes us nervous as well.
Do you think everybody, do you think getting away from COVID for a second, so forget COVID, so let's imagine it never happened, has the gap year idea, are more people taking up gap years, or are less people taking up years, as we're generally as a race more connected now? The youth, the young are much more connected. The old idea for an old fart like me, gap year was a real thing. Now it's maybe less. Is it less important? Are more people doing it? Less people? What do you think?
Oh no, everyone, most people, well, not. There's a lot that still take a gap year.
Yeah.
And it's what you choose to do in that gap year that makes it a waste or a success.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of uncertainty is what I seem to be coming across. I've honestly got students of all ages ringing saying, what can I actually do? And even though we do only specialize in Kenya, I'm very happy to chat to them. And there are so many people just saying, I'm not really sure whether I can or can't. And it's like, just do it. So long as you're going with someone that can talk you through it, you're going out there, exactly as Millie has just said, for a purposeful, effective period of time.
Yeah,
it's much better than sitting here in the UK twiddling our thumbs. You're going to gain so many skills and meet so many amazing local people and really give back to communities.
Yeah. Tom?
I think the key thing as well is, over that sort of 6 to 9 months, we've at Trailfinder has done a huge amount of research, as I'm sure everyone has, in terms of what the young people these days want from their gap year. I forget who mentioned it, but I think one of the big changes is not necessarily the frequency that people are doing gap years or the popularity, but it's what people are doing on those gap years. In years gone by, perhaps in my time and some other people's times, it was maybe a bit more about a jolly and, maybe a bit more drinking and so forth. I think these days people are a lot wiser, and it's more about traveling with a sense of purpose, whilst also having an amazing time at the same time. Whether it's a volunteer project, and his life experiences, working abroad. I mean, the skills you can pick up from just going to Australia, for example, and working in a different culture with different people. The skills you can pick up from that you can then add to your CV, add to your university application, to help you stand apart from the rest of the competition, really, is amazingly beneficial, as I say, as well as being an amazing experience at the same time.
Yeah.
And just to sort of carry on from that, I think it's the term gap year that's maybe a little bit off-putting, because people associate that with sort of post-school and pre-university, whereas people are so wise to traveling now, so they do it post-university as well as pre-university. They do it as career breaks, because they're really realizing the benefit of time out, not just at that first stage, but moving forward.
Rebrand the word gap year.
Yeah, I always
definitely.
say,
my sisters are on like their third gap year, and my parents are tearing their hair out, but the benefits that they're getting from all this travel is amazing.
I don't call it a year out. I don't call it a year out. I call it a year in, because it's a year fully living in life. You're going out and grabbing opportunities. You're not dropping out. You're dropping into something new and really finding out about yourself, what you love, hopefully doing something that you love. And that's what I really focus on is let's you have just been like plugging away at pretty dull, especially when you've been doing it remotely all this time, pretty dull stuff that maybe hasn't grabbed your interest, and you've been watching it over a Zoom screen, like we are here. It's not real life. You need to get out there and do something that you love. Leave all that behind, but make it relevant to the things that you're planning in the future. And actually then, oddly, by planning to do the stuff that you love, your future will become clear, because you find out what you love and what you hate. And also, handy stuff like how to cook pasta and put on a duvet cover, which is always good.
And you're a long time working, we've all discovered in this world. So you may as well get out the choice. Sorry, Millie, you're speaking.
Well, you're going back to your question, Gordon, about the gap year. Is it still popular? Is it what is it? What we've kind of seen this year is, well, the trends of the gap year. Before this year, the likes of ourselves, the organized, going with an organized group, was, let's all be honest, slightly losing its popularity. It was people were turning their backs on it, going, let's go with STA, no longer, let's go with Trailfinders, let's get a cheap flight and off we go. That was becoming popular. People were just saying, I could just do this myself. What we've noticed this year with the pandemic and the fear factor, and because they could only travel for volunteering reasons, I think we've seen a huge turn in the trends, which I think will trickle down. So yes, they've got to travel for education reasons, and they'll go with, with Charlie and Charlotte to kind of learn a skill, be educated, or they'll go with Florence and Emily and myself, to do some volunteering. And the feedback that we've had from this year of travelers is, one of the questions is, would you have done this had you not needed to? And they were like, no, but I wish I had really, I'm glad I have, and I will be telling my peers do it, because to volunteer and to give back and contribute and slow travel, slowing right down, stopping in a country for more than 2 weeks is so much more enjoyable. But they've been forced to realize that this year.
Yeah. Can I ask just a quick question again, moving away from the dreaded COVID, in terms of destinations, back in the day, again, many years ago, it always used to be sort of Australia and then back through Asia. Where are people going now? John, I know you're going to say Venice.
Where they can. There's about 3 countries.
Yeah, I know, but Jeff, pre-COVID, what was the trend?
For me, it was completely to do with, obviously languages are at the heart of what I do, but obviously you can look at what the most popular languages are, but as Spanish becomes more and more popular as a language in schools, then people more and more are asking me for other places to learn Spanish. So I've sent people to most Spanish speaking countries in the world since I founded the Language Gap, which isn't very long ago, and that's a lot of places. So I've had people doing conservation in Paraguay, riding horses down in Patagonia, a lot of people to Spain. I find it very, a lot of people want to go to obviously France, but also Germany, Austria, lots of people wanting to go and learn different varieties of a language. So that's also interesting. I've had people who go and do a lot of French in France, and then they pop over to Senegal to kind of hear a different variety of the language, so that they broaden their knowledge. But I can send, I send people to all sorts of places. I even had a request during lockdown from there was a diplomatic family who ended up in Cambodia and needed to learn Khmer, and they needed a Khmer teacher at short notice, and I managed to find them that in Phnom Penh. So I think that it's wherever people can get to be honest, because they're so fascinated, particularly this age group. I think there's a great big interest in Japan. I think the minute that Japan opens up, it's going to be that is, I've got a line of people waiting to get out to Japan at the moment.
Tom, you're nodding your head. Are you seeing that as well at Trailfinders?
Yeah, Japan's been on the incline for the last couple of years, and you know, Rugby World Cup, Olympics coming up, etc. This really heightens the exposure of Japan. So yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the destinations. The other one is Costa Rica, which we're really seeing starting to pick up. Now that will be, as Millie mentioned, quite largely led by its country you go to and volunteer in. Obviously recently it's gone on the red list. But I think Costa Rica is a great country. You know, it's got that sort of edginess, like sort of Central America, but it is very well set up for where it is in the world. Obviously, you know, lots of Americans go there on vacation, and it's got that sort of well set up vibe, and just a variety of different things you can do there. From you know, traveling independently yourself, doing volunteer projects, group adventure tour, and all the rest of it. Learning a language, no doubt, as well. I'd say Costa Rica is an interesting one to keep an eye on.
Brilliant. And
Definitely.
what about Brexit? Very boring question, but what about Brexit? Emily, stick with me.
Well, speaking as somebody who runs a program in Europe,
yeah, I was going to say
to say a couple of things about Brexit. One of the things that has you know, Brexit is not good for us. Only on a very, very minor detail in that we're not treated as Europeans, and therefore we don't get in free to museums and galleries. And the such like. But the other thing that I would say about the sort of fluctuation of people going on gap years was that, you know, when we launched I say we, my pa launched the John Hall course in 1965, there probably are about the same amount of people who come on the course now as did then. And I mean, it's the amount of people who go on gap year programs has it increased massively during the 80s. I mean, I think there was a lot to do with tuition fees coming in, the end of the Oxbridge exam. Probably some of you would remember that, some of you wouldn't. So that, you know, when there was the Oxbridge exam, which was the 7th term, obviously the gap year kind of became de rigueur, because anybody who wanted to apply for one of those two universities had to take that year out. But, you know, in the 1960s, Europe was a really exciting place to go. I mean, there was, what was there? Operation Drake, which has become Operation Raleigh. And there was the VSO and a few other things that were going on. And there weren't that many options. And actually what is fantastic about the gap year, and there's a couple of things, because my elder son is on his gap year at the moment, is the joy of the gap year is that it's pretty well the only time in your life that you're going to have no responsibilities, there are no demands on people. You know, you go through all the way through school, being tested, having to do exams, and then you get to universities and you still have to jump through hoops, and then you try and hopefully get a job, and then, you know, the next thing, well, you know, you're saving up enough money to send your children on their gap year.
Yeah. Charlotte, you've got your hand up, Charlotte. You want to say something? Charlotte?
Yeah, sorry, I did. I raised the emoji. Yeah. I just am I there?
You're
frozen.
You're live and unleashed.
Oh, I'm back. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to the point about sort of Europe and Brexit, and I will tie this into ski seasons because I did see it pop up on the chat.
No, you
further afield that you can so easily get to. There are so many wonderful countries that are so much more accessible now, which is why I think people are traveling further afield. Part of the reason why our courses are out there, because we all ski on our doorstep. Am I frozen?
No, you're
no,
good.
I'm good. Everyone else is frozen and looking at me as though I am. So there are so many wonderful options further afield where you can still go out and enjoy ski instructing. The age-old chalet hosting versus ski instructing. The role of the chalet host is becoming increasingly difficult to come by. Brexit's impacted that, law changes in France, lots more applicants, sort of post-university people as career breakers wanting those roles. So the chalet host role for a gap year student is really difficult, not just Brexit. Whereas you can still go to some wonderful ski resorts all across the world and in my opinion, have a better experience because it's somewhere where you've maybe not had the chance to go and really explore another culture.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the problems that we've had is that some students, you know, our program is 2 months, but you know, if you're only allowed to have 90 days in Europe, and then you have to come back for 90 days, then that puts a lot of pressure on people who essentially just want to do Europe. I know everybody, you know, the people who come on the John Hall course are really excited about going to Africa, and they're really excited about going to Asia. But if you're a kind of Europhile, Brexit is a tough one.
Yeah, I have I did a dry run before Brexit for someone with a Fijian passport, and I'm so glad that I did it. And it was a really successful gap year, and it was one of the ones that I do what I love doing most, which is building a whole gap year for somebody. And he wanted to go and do international relations, and because he only had these 90 days, and I knew that this was coming up for us, I was able to sort of run it as a dry run. So he came into France. And he did on his, you're allowed to do this on a tourist visa. He did teaching English as a foreign language course. He did an intensive French course, and then he left to go to West Africa to volunteer for 3 months. And then he was able to come back into France and continue with his intensive French course and do some volunteering in France. So he managed to do it. I managed to build this 9-month experience for him with 6 months in Europe. But taking the middle 90 days out so that he was able to come back in again. And being aware of that and knowing your way around it, I think is, you know, this is where we all come into play, that we can negotiate it. But actually what I would say is that I think that this will have to pan out. I think that in the same way that we have these working visas agreements for young people with New Zealand, Australia and Canada, I think ultimately in the next few years, they will have to sort this out with Europe and have a reciprocal agreement. I don't see how it can work otherwise. And so cross fingers and lobby your MPs because they'll want their kids to do it too.
Okay, just on a much more general topic now, Tom, you know, with the whole world to choose from, what's your advice? What are the tips on planning a gap year?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing when you're planning a gap year and the world is literally your oyster. It can be exciting versus and daunting at the same time. I think one of the key things is working out what it is you want to get out of your gap year. What are the bucket list experiences that you've always dreamed of doing, you know, from seeing certain wildlife in the wild, or maybe you've dreamt about living the Aussie lifestyle on the beaches, whatever it is, and then really start from there. Use that as your base. Work out what's your bucket list, what amazing destinations have you been to around the world. Maybe there's something you've been to before with your family that you want to revisit. I suspect most people want to go off and see completely new destinations. I'll just give a little smidgen on Trailfinders. As you may know, we've got about 750 sales consultants all the way across the country and in Ireland, and pretty much all of them, I won't say all, but pretty much all of them started their love of travel with a gap year themselves, and they're absolute fountains of knowledge when it comes to planning a gap year. We've actually set up a dedicated sales team just for our TTA customers. So yeah, that would be my top tips. Think of your bucket list and start from there.
Perfect.
Can I add to that? It's not, but there is that add to your bucket list. But if we're talking to people now who are going on their gap year, like my son, planning it right now, you can't go to Australia and New Zealand. So you've got to plan your gap year with the countries where you can go. So yes, you can choose your bucket list and this, that, and the other. But what we say to people is choose the time that you want to go. Plan your gap year. So right, I'm going to work now. I want to travel in January, and then decide where you want to go closer to January when you know where you can go. Yeah. And through Trailfinders, who we work really closely with, and their visa team, and our Leap VIP, we give lists of where you can go, running commentary on a day-to-day basis. Otherwise, we get people ringing up saying, can I go to Australia? It's like, no.
Flexibility is key for people taking a gap year now. So you definitely have that bucket list. Planning helps budgets. So you do need to have a starting point, but you also need to accept that you need to be flexible, but there are still so many great options out there. So it's not going to be a wasted gap year. And there are so many amazing people to help get students to these wonderful places.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I absolutely love doing, sorry, Florence, sorry. What I love doing is someone calling me a week before they want to go away and saying, what can I do? And then just kind of going from there and, you know, calling around in the industry and saying, hey guys, what have you got on? Sorry, Florence, you were gonna say something, but can I just ask you a question as well? Like, how soon do you have to book to go on one of your trips, for instance?
With Culsans?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at the moment, there's definitely a trend happening that it's all becoming very last minute, and we are very happy and accommodating towards being as flexible as it needs to be. So we can, you know, everything is fully refundable up until literally it can be a month before. I work very, very, very closely to the communities based out there. I used to actually work in Kenya, which is how this has all come about. So it's not, you know, we're not as commercial maybe as lots of other places. They are my great friends, and we have a huge respect for each other. And there's a good point here on just talking about different locations and are people comfortable with having foreigners in, given all these different variants and things? 100% yes. With the communities I work with, I sat down with a group of Maasai elders and discussed the scholarship fund that Culsans was able to give this year. And 4 grown men had tears in their eyes over the fact that, given COVID being such a tough year and the massive loss of income, just how much we were able to support. We helped fund 82 kids through their school term this year, which was unbelievable. And being able to share that with the students, you know, was really, really huge. So lots of countries, I know COVID does complicate things, but definitely communities really still need people to be going out there.
Yeah. Charlotte?
Can I just add on that? There has been a shift to booking sort of closer to the start date of courses, but there are lots of companies out there that, if you've expressed an interest or you want to go with, will help find alternatives. I'm thinking the winter gone, we had loads of students ready to join us on the slopes in Canada. We couldn't get there. We had an alternative option for them in Switzerland. And that wasn't our duty. We went above and beyond to make sure that we found an alternative for them. So please also, if you are looking to do something and there's something you'd like to do, speak to these professionals, because not only can they answer your problems at the time, they can also help you moving forward. And don't be afraid to ask those questions, and make sure that you're going with a company that you feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. And what Tom said about the bucket list, you could come to me and say, look, what I've always dreamt of doing is doing this thing. Like, I can't do the thing right now because the thing is shut or the thing is cancelled. What can I do instead? And with the breadth of knowledge that I have, I'm able to kind of pick through it and say, well, there's this other thing that is kind of similar, and you'll pick up the same soft skills, you'll have, you know, a similar experience, and actually it might turn out to be better because it's never occurred to you that you might do this also. I've had so many people this year come to me and say, look, I know you do languages, but I don't want to learn a language, and can you like find me something anyway? And I said, yes, I can, but to do the things that I want, you know, that I can offer you, you're going to have to learn a bit of the language, because otherwise you're just going to be a dead weight. And they're like, no. And actually, when they come back, they say the thing that I really enjoyed was the first couple of weeks when I was in the language course, learning a language that I had never learned before, staying with a host family, doing this experience that has been thrust upon me because of circumstances. And I had the most amazing time. And that is so exciting, that sort of open mind that you know, young people who've been really kind of closed down and terrified and you know, we're constantly telling them things are dangerous. They're willing to put themselves out there. I absolutely hand it to them. You know,
is anyone on the panel working with sort of volunteer vaccination programs, people to go out and help with all that sort of stuff?
I've had several students have actually joined our trips, and part of their fundraising, they have been doing that here in the UK. But no, we haven't. We're not. Our students aren't medically qualified, or don't know enough about that really to get involved with that out in Kenya for us. But we have had students that have partaken in that in the UK, which is exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And on a really boring topic, just keep it very, very brief. Everyone's worry here is your child goes out, it all hits the fan, everything goes red, you've got to get them back. What about insurance? I know that's a deathly sort of dry topic, but it's so important. And I as a parent went through that with my eldest son and an STA, and it's a bit of a minefield, bit of a nightmare. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so travel insurance is important at any time, definitely now. So I mean, every policy has different conditions. We have our own Trailfinder's travel insurance policy that has full COVID protection. So if you get COVID or you have a positive test in the weeks or days leading up to your departure, it covers you for your trip pre-departure, and then also whilst you're in destination, if anything should happen, then you're covered that side of it as well as obviously having people on the phone to help either get you home or to get you to a different country or whatever it happens to be that you need to do.
But the key to insurance, which is that it has to be, you're insured even though the Foreign Office says please don't travel. That is the bit that people forget. And if it's not that, it's null and void. So it's a complete waste of time. So when people ring up and say, don't worry, I'm covered by my Amex, it's like, no, you're not.
Yeah, I've had a lot of that. I've had a lot of people saying, no, we've got travel insurance. And I said, actually, you don't have it. I know that what you've bought doesn't cover it, and let's actually go through the T's and C's. And this year, if anything, again, I think it's a really positive thing that's come out of it. It's made me read the small print of absolutely everything I do, and it really makes you. It really separates out the good from the bad. Like, if a company is going to cover you up until the last minute, if a language school that I work with overseas says, look, if there's a local lockdown, we will give you your lesson. We will either give you your money back, or you can go home and do the lessons remotely. You can choose. We will never ever take your money from you if we can't offer something to you. That is a decent company. That is what they should be doing, even though they will be out of pocket. Anyone who does that, I'm really happy to work with them. And people who are going beyond the call of duty and are basically working unpaid to make sure that students can have a lovely time and they'll look after them. Those are the people I'm enjoying working with at the moment.
Yeah,
Charlotte, you put your hand up.
Yeah, just a point on actually making sure you can find the right insurance that covers all these things we're talking about. My biggest bit of advice is to make sure that you're not just buying an off-the-shelf product from online. Pick up the phone and speak to a broker to make sure that you are getting something that covers you. So many people just think that they can buy it online easily, but in this day and age, I think it's really important to go through a broker.
I found people selling insurance, and it says COVID-19 cover, and you can go through and you can click and you can buy it, and the tiniest print on this so-called COVID-19 cover that will not cover you if you're traveling against FCO advice. So and that's for sale. It's an absolute daylight robbery.
I know, and there's some of the big guys in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got very cross with them and said, this is not reasonable, because you can only go to Iceland and they won't even have us. So what is the point of this?
Yeah,
we work. When COVID really kicked off, the phone calls, as I'm sure with all of you guys, to really get to grips with all of the nitty-gritty on insurance was really, really quite interesting. And with Culsans, we've got a set number of people that we know can tick off all the boxes. Obviously, you've got the huge COVID issue at the moment, but also depending on what activities you're going out to do on your gap year. Our trip alone covers mountaineering up to 5,000 meters, swimming in the ocean every day, walking on foot with the Maasai following elephants. There's a huge variety there. So you've got to also make sure that your insurance covers all of that. And in some trips, I'm sure other guys do it too, but we've already got included in our costs additional emergency helicopter evacuation insurance, just to make sure that everyone is totally safe. But I agree in what Charlotte was saying, picking up the phone and having a conversation properly to get a bespoke package is really, really important. You can't just get off the shelf stuff, and it's really key to know the difference between each one.
Yeah. And you need to hold people accountable as well, and really put them against the wall and say, you know, what am I actually buying here? And I've had to do for various people, I have quite a lot of, particularly this year, but always I've run some marine conservation where scuba diving is involved. And one insurance company that may cover you to do one thing may not include another, so you may have to double up and get a specific sports insurance to cover dive insurance, to cover scuba diving or training if you're doing professional training,
which is where a broker can help again, because you can have it in one policy and there's normally quite a cost saving there as well, and taking out multiple.
Millie, you were going to jump in there.
Well, I was just going to say with Emily, in Costa Rica, you actually need to do our scuba program, you need 3 different insurances.
Yeah.
This comes back to the trends of the gap year that we touched on earlier. Is that going alone, you know, the trend of old of just catching a backpack and off you go really is kind of dwindling away, because people need the advice of us, of not just us, but the other guys who are still in the gap year industry, and dwindling, to be told and guided, what do we need? How do we do it? And that's why we set up this little thing called Leap VIP, which is a guiding service, which people join for nothing. And then we kind of put you, right, if you wanted to do this, you need those insurances, your flights through Trailfinders, you're going to Kenya through Florence, blah, blah. You know, it's like.
I'm going to have to jump out, folks, because I have a class starting. Unfortunately, I am still running a gap year program. So,
high five.
All right, Charlie. Thanks very much indeed.
Bye.
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 Millie, you're the Leap VIP. I mean, clearly that has done a huge amount of good work now because of what's going on now. Let's just say, fingers crossed, that COVID disappears. Is that still a relevant service next year, for example?
An argument we have in our office and with my 2 boys all the time, but I think there is a place for it, and we will see, because it's like a consultancy information service. So it's a directory of people. You know, what we've found is before COVID, there are so many sharks in this business, like, as you know, in every business, in every industry. And it's slowly dwindling, and the good guys are really remaining. And we're remaining because we've been helping people all year, helping each other all year. I mean, I wouldn't be standing, and the Leap wouldn't be standing if it hadn't been for Trailfinders, you know, and the insurance company that we got. You know, it's all so collaborative. And I am so happy for clients, Leap VIPers, they ring me up and say, okay, Millie, I've joined your thing. I'm going to Costa Rica. I don't want to do any of your volunteering, but I want to do this. How do I do it? And, you know, I want to go to Kenya, or I want to go, and it's just like, go to this person, go to that person. So the Leap has become like an advisory service, because Guy and I have been in the market. We've been in this industry for 30 odd years, and we're like the old dogs, you know, we're still here, and we can say, okay, nope, that's not going to work. That's just don't even bother risking it. But
it's such a clever idea in a way. I mean, as you say, working in a collaborative industry like this, it's nice for parents to know that it's not all sharks and everyone's trying to get your money and all the rest of it. There is a communication between all of you and stuff.
Huge communication.
If we hadn't had each other this year, I think I would have just, I don't know what I would have done. Jumped in the sea and swum to France, I think. I think it's just, you know, to know that there's other people there who are struggling. We all used to bump into each other at gap fairs at schools, and kind of chat to each other and talk over, you know, the good stuff and the bad stuff. But none of us saw this coming, and the fact that, you know, we have been able to keep going and to talk to each other, and to take advice. You know, it's become what used to be, I suppose, much more of a competition. It's not much more now the sort of, you know, we're all rowing the boat together, really.
Well, there is no competition, because a lot of people have just said, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to take the risk. You know, they've looked at the insurance issues, they've looked at all the, you know, the admin involved to go away, and the risks and the is enormous. And a lot, I would say, over half the gap year companies that we know have just gone, no. And they're sitting on with furlough. And when that furlough's over, who knows what's going to happen, but the industry is going to look very, very different.
Charlotte?
It's because we're all passionate about what we do and wanting to pass that on to others that we're all still here. You know, we've given out so much free advice. We don't take any money for it. And it's because we genuinely want to help these young gappers have amazing experiences. Hands down, my gap year, I know it was a long time ago, was one of the best years of my life. We do it because we love it, not because we're in it for the money.
And can I just say, we're going to wrap up in a minute, because it's been really fascinating. And actually, what has come across in buckets is the passion for what you do in the industry. And I think it's really really heartening for as a parent, you know, knowing that that's out there and that help. And actually, what has also come across is use the professionals, because they kind of know what they're doing. And you know, if it does all go wrong, you're going to help them to get out of it as well. So look, I would like to. Sorry, Emily.
Yeah, I was just really, really quickly just going to say that I think we could all share, you know, if we had the time to share one anecdote about the funniest thing that we had to sort out this year, I think we'd come up with some absolute peaches. You know, the finding prescriptions on an island off the coast of Mexico, I think, is one of what, you know, prescription drugs for somebody who'd run out, and getting people from one country to another so they can get home without quarantining. That it's made us realize just how, actually, I'm going to blow everyone's trumpet, we are really good at this.
Yeah. Well, look, I think you're all brilliant. That's why we got you together tonight. And so thank you all very, very much. One final question I've got. There's a chap who wants to get to a moon party in Thailand. What are the chances?
No.
No, no, no. Oh, come on, let's end on a positive.
Maybe not
You
next year.
can. You can go and
Save it for next year.
Next
Save it
year.
when you
Right.
can.
You
Okay.
can. You can go and you can go. You have to go to Phuket. You have to quarantine for 10 days. Then you can go.
Go to the Pear Tree in Battersea Park. Apparently that's not far off these days.
Perfect.
Join me
Plenty
for
of
a
options on your doorstep.
All right. All right, everybody. Look, thanks so much for your time. It's been invaluable. And we've had a lot of people ask some really good questions. And I'm hoping they feel much more informed than they did an hour ago. And I'll let you get off to your wine now. And thanks very much. And good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.